What's up, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here, ready to talk some football with my good buddy Andy Herman, the Don of the Pack-A-Day podcast and purveyor of fine Packers takes everywhere you go on the internet. Andy, I'd ask how you are, but do I really want to know? How you handling the brutal loss yesterday?
Yeah, probably not. I really always enjoy after a loss, us usually being able to get to talk about these games. It's always very therapeutic. I have to say, though, right. I was really hoping it was going to be about 7 or 8 weeks before we had to have one of these chats and not, after week one and maybe not so decisively after week one.
Right. It was brutal. Talk about a complete no-show. I don't even know where to start, but we got to start somewhere. So let's start on the offensive side of the ball. I think a lot of hay is going to be made. We're obviously recording this prior to hearing from Matt LaFleur after he's had the opportunity to watch the tape. But how much do you think this was the Packers having a bad plan on offense as opposed to, and obviously poor play at the quarterback position, et cetera, as opposed to what we saw on offense being a reaction to the fact that they couldn't stop the Saints and could basically not get the ball back? Do you feel like they kind of felt behind the 8 ball, or do you think it was just a bad plan regardless?
I think it was all of it. I mean, I don't think that you can look at any one thing and be like, well, that looked good or that was okay. Like, I think it seemed like they were unprepared. It seemed like they were unready to play. It seemed like, as you said, maybe they read the news clippings ahead of time, just assumed, hey, back-to-back NFC, championship games, we'll take care of business in the season and, we'll kind of figure that out down the line. But I don't think that they reacted well to adversity in any way, shape, or form. I compared it to being on tilt in a poker game. And I think this is multiple times now where we've seen this from the Packers where, I mean, I liked them going for 4th down, even down 3-0, but they went down 3-0 and Matt LaFleur in this offense, you could almost tell like, we got to get points right away because like, we can't let them have the ball back because they're just going to score again. And then they went up 10-0. And then again, I think they had the 2 nice runs with Dillon. Then it was pass, punt. And then they completely abandoned the run after that point. And it almost feels when they're down 17-0 or 10-0, whatever the score is, they feel like they have to score 100 points with the next pass that they throw rather than using all the things that they've been successful with over the course of the last couple seasons and staying balanced on offense. And you feel that anxiety, that pressure. And to their point, if you have a defense that for the last couple seasons and early in this game felt like it was not going to stop the opposing team, I can understand the pressure that I'm sure the offense was under, but trying to get it back all in one play is certainly not doing yourselves any favors either. So I think it's all of it. Execution obviously was terrible as well.
It's interesting too, because you look at the quarterback play and Rodgers clearly all the narratives and all the drama and everything that transpired over the offseason. You were there every practice. I was there for most of camp. It sure didn't seem like that quarterback that we saw yesterday down in Jacksonville came anywhere close to resembling the guy that we saw at practice day in and day out. And to me, some of it, yes, was the Saints defense did a number. I mean, they did a really nice job of kind of taking away what the Packers wanted to do. But to your point that you just made regarding the lack of balance, that was what was so mystifying to me. Aaron Rodgers didn't win an MVP last year by spreading it out, going empty and throwing it around the yard. He won an MVP because they had a balanced attack that not even about like, okay, it's so many runs versus so many passes, but they had the threat of a run game at least that kept defenses honest, kept them guessing, sometimes have safeties dropping down, what have you, committing numbers. And that's when they would be able to take advantage. But yesterday, it just seemed like they got away from everything that seemed to work for them last year, whether that was the condensed formations, whether that was the motion pre-snap. And then we saw a little bit of it. But man, it just seemed like a preseason game almost on the offensive side of the ball, especially when you look at, I know some of the really simplistic kind of the rollout stuff that Aaron clearly expected the tight end to be there, be available, and he's covered. Now we go into panic mode. It just didn't seem like the Aaron Rodgers anywhere, shape, or form, like I said, that we saw throughout the summer.
No, it wasn't. And I thought Rodgers had a fantastic training camp. I honestly, going back the last couple of seasons, I thought this was one of his best training camps. So that's why this was so much more surprising. And I get that, when the live bullets are flying and it's real football, like things are a little bit different. You can't just go based on training camp, but still, this is the MVP of the league and he knows what he's doing. And that was just not Aaron Rodgers-esque. This was not Matt LaFleur's offense-esque. There's 2 very different offenses, right? I go back to the Rams the game against the Rams in the playoffs a season ago, where that's the cover 2 shell king of the world in that Rams defense.
Right.
And they had such a great plan to get things quick to the outside of their receivers, to run up the middle, to get 5-6 man boxes for AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones, and to have this amazing plan on offense and to make them get out of their 2 cover shell and really, dictate to the opposing defense what they were going to do. And then you had this game, which was the antithesis of that, where, like you said, they end up going 5 wide. We saw very little motion, even to begin with. Like, I understand that you need to change up your offense a little bit, but I would have liked to have seen them play the hits a little bit more early in the game just to kind of get some of that stuff working. Right. And we just didn't see any of that.
It was interesting, too. What did you think of the play of the offensive line? Because I know there was a lot of trepidation around the franchise. I didn't really hear any of it from people inside the building, but regarding the youth up front, obviously kicking Elton out to left tackle, I was shocked at how well they actually held up. And I know Royce got taken advantage of a few times, and I think that's to be expected, right? Especially when you're kicking Cam Jordan inside specifically to try to take advantage of a rookie. It's going to happen. But for the most part, I was pleasantly surprised at how well they held up. I would have liked to see them be given the opportunity to fire off the ball a few more times and maybe get something going in the run game. But overall, and I think that's what Aaron said post-game, for the most part, I thought protection held up well.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a couple great points there. So I think, first of all, it's almost impossible to judge them in the run game, right? Because if you're going to run the ball like 6 times, whatever, right, like, you're not getting in any rhythm. You're not getting to fire off the ball. You're not setting the tone. The other team is dictating to you. So, and they had a couple nice runs with Dillon, but you just can't even evaluate them from a run standpoint. And then from a pass protection standpoint, well, yeah, again, if you're going to go 5 wide and you're down 17-0 early, and the other team, including Cameron Jordan and Marcus Davenport, just gets to tee off, that obviously gives the Saints a massive advantage in that situation as well. And I thought overall, all things considered, if you had to ask me like who won the Saints defensive front or the Packers offensive line, I would probably give a slight nod to the Saints offensive front. But considering circumstances, situation, 2 rookies playing, to me, the offensive line was one of the least of their concerns coming out of yesterday's game.
Let's flip it over to the defensive side of the ball, because as we just mentioned, Aaron Rodgers looked great all camp, but he was going up against the Packers defense, which maybe might play a little bit into why he looks so good, because holy Toledo, did they make Jameis Winston look good yesterday. And, again, we haven't talked or heard from Matt LaFleur post-tape viewing, but I was absolutely flabbergasted, and I put this up there on Twitter last night, and I'll throw it to you. The amount of soft coverage that we saw from this secondary, and I understand sometimes that's the call and that's the predominant way they want to play certain situations, but when it's again and again and again allowing free releases, Sean Payton's going to take that all day. And the fact that there was very little adjustment and or pushback and continuous just allowing free releases, allowing guys to kind of flow through your secondary, I mean, I'm not going to say it's alarm bells after week 1, but holy cow, it's hard not to kind of get a, okay, what's going on with Joe Barry kind of feeling after everything we heard this offseason, everything we heard going back to last season regarding how Matt LaFleur wanted this defense to play, because I sure didn't see any of that yesterday.
It's funny, as you tweeted that out and mentioned that, I was talking about talking to Perry Goldstein on the podcast about the exact same thing. I wrote about it as well in the article this morning, but it's interesting because we had heard, especially in regards to Kevin King, we heard from Matt LaFleur on 2 separate occasions. We really like when Kevin is up, pressed against the line of scrimmage, playing aggressive, press man, and we think he can be a very good corner in this league when he's doing those things. You and I talked about a couple weeks ago about how the offensive line philosophy from GM to offensive line coach to head coach is in lockstep, and they know how to find the players, develop those players, and make sure that they are a fit within Matt LaFleur's system. Right now, the defensive backfield, specifically corner, feels like the exact opposite of that. You've got a group of corners that right now, to me, Eric Stokes and especially Kevin King, like these guys need to be up closer to the line of scrimmage, playing more of a press man sort of style. We know Jair Alexander can play that way. You have a defensive coordinator and a philosophy that is, we want to play more of off zone defense. We want to keep everything in front of us and come up and make the tackle. Well, you don't have zone corners. You don't have guys that are consistent tacklers. You don't have the players that fit that specific scheme. And we saw that in multiple occasions. And we saw like the classic Packers defensive back lack of communication. You saw on the one touchdown, a guy's pointing and then nobody goes with him. So he's trying to recover. You saw Juwan Johnson completely uncover in the end zone before Amos found him late on the Jameis touch. Like we saw two corners run directly into each other on the other James Johnson touchdown. There was no communication. They're not playing the right style that probably fits their skills best. As great as they do with the offensive line, it is the exact opposite in the defensive backfield, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and you do wonder then, because I keep going back to what Brian has said repeatedly when asked about the switch, right, to this different scheme. And, well, we like the versatility of our guys, and we feel our guys can make the switch. Well, I mean, yesterday they couldn't do anything that was being asked of them. And it's so disheartening when you see guys turning around seconds before the snap, making sure they're, quote, on the right page or on the same page, yet consistently they're not. And then post-snap and post-play, they're back to going, oh, I thought you were over here. You were supposed to be that way, blah, blah, blah. I understand it's the first game of the year, but at some point, maybe we got to look at putting 30 guys in street clothes, not playing in a preseason environment, because goodness knows, I understand it's a new scheme, but to your point, if you got guys who are square pegs being asked to be placed in round holes, at least give them practice attempting to do so.
Yeah, and
because yesterday was just so hard to watch.
It really was. And I just think that they have to figure out an overall philosophy that's going to work on this defensive side of the ball. They have to figure out what is going to be their niche, and they got to figure out, are they going to be a bend but don't break team? Are they going to be a team that tries to get to the quarterback? Are they going to be a team that tries to turnovers? Because right now they are completely lacking in identity, and that's something that they have to get something figured out sooner rather than later, because right now it's 11 individuals out there playing on the field. It doesn't look like team defense in any capacity.
Well, and it's interesting because, we can talk about the defensive backfield and their philosophy and playing off and what have you, but then at some point you have to either shed a block, get through, put pressure on the quarterback, or stop the run with your guys up front. And man, they got pushed around. And I understand the Saints have a great offensive line, like one of the best that they'll probably face all year. But man, again, I keep using this word, but it was completely disheartening to see, 4-man rush going absolutely nowhere. Yeah. And then that's where that philosophy kills you on the back end, because, guys are given free releases. So it's pretty easy to find soft spots in the zone and or shake your man. And then Jameis Winston has a very easy completion for minimal yardage. Because that was the other thing. It kept feeling like they were so scared to get beat deep that they kept playing off. And then finally they just, matriculated it down the field so many times that eventually they got the big shot down the field and then it was all over. But man, the lack of physicality or ability up front to make anything happen disruption-wise, make the quarterback uncomfortable, that was so hard to swallow after a offseason about how, this scheme was going to put pressure on quarterbacks, and we saw anything but yesterday against Jameis Winston.
Why is there not a shirt on Cheesehead TV yet for Get Kenny Clark some help? Because we have been preaching it forever, and Kenny Clark has still no help. And frankly, Kenny needed to probably play better in that game as well. It's not like he had a standout game, but you know what? Some help might, help his performance as well. I think that was one of the things that was really disheartening. But, we talk about the talent and some of the things, like one of two things, right? Listen, if you look at the other side of the field and the New Orleans Saints, Christian Ringo is playing at defensive tackle. Shai Tuttle is playing at defensive tackle. Paulson Adebo is playing his first game in the NFL. Didn't even play, I believe, in college last year, right? Desmond Trufant gets signed this past week. You've got Juwan Johnson.
3 days ago. Right.
Exactly. Juwan Johnson playing his very first game in the NFL as a tight end after making a transition from wide receiver. Kelvin Throckmorton comes in and plays guard after, was it Ruiz or no, it was McCoy, I think, that goes out hurt. Yeah. One of the two that goes out hurt. Throckmorton comes in, plays basically his first laps. If Green Bay would have rolled out the wide receiver core that the Saints had to roll out, they would have been like, oh, you can't get Aaron Rodgers any wide receivers. Like Marquez Callaway and Traquan Smith are going to be your top two wide receivers. Chris Hogan, who's playing lacrosse, is like your next guy up. Ty Montgomery.
Chris Hogan's out there scoring touchdowns,
But the Saints, to credit to them on offense and defense, had a scheme and a plan to elevate every single one of those players and make them successful within the confines of what they were trying to do on offense and on defense. And it worked. And on the flip side, the Packers either didn't have the correct plans for those players, some of the defensive back stuff we talked about earlier, or B, we've now reached a point where, you know what, Dean Lowry, Tyler Lancaster, Kevin King, Lucas Patrick, some of these guys are just, if they don't fit within that and you can no longer elevate them to the point where you can play winning football, then you have to make some sort of change. And it's one of those two things, and maybe it's both, whatever, but you've got to get that figured out.
What do you think? I mean, obviously maybe not the only one, but one of the few positives yesterday is maybe they found a punter. And now, hey, maybe they're going to be punting a lot if they keep playing like they did on Sunday. But, I mean, that's like, is that it? Is that the one positive? I mean, other than that, I saw Jair was, bringing it as he always does, and I thought he had a fair game. But outside of that, were there any other positives? Because it was really hard going back. And that's the other thing. You and I, we're masochists. We go back and we watch these things again.
It's so fun to watch over, Aaron.
Holy cow. Last night, I was so depressed watching it again. And I thought, because that thing where people always say, oh, it's never as bad as it feels in the moment. No, it was. It was
Sometimes
that bad.
It is. Yeah.
It was that bad. And I was trying to pull out just a few positives. And I got nothing outside, like I said, outside the punter and Jair. Give me something outside of those two. Or tell me.
I thought Elton had a nice game. Jair,
like there you go. Good one.
Jair had a good game. They, maybe found a punter, which is nice. Outside, I said Mason Crosby had 3 jobs the entire game, 2 kickoffs that went out of the end zone and a field goal, and he was 3 for 3, so he shot 100%. That's the consistent Mason Crosby. And I do think, I know it was vanilla and in garbage time and basically a preseason game broke out by this point, but I do think Jordan Love made a couple really nice throws that in hindsight were like, okay, like that was pretty
good reads.
Exactly.
I'll give you that.
It's vanilla. It doesn't mean anything. It's not real football. But you still like to see like the one where he just kind of flicked his arm angle, flipped from a bizarre arm angle and got it to Amari Rodgers really on his first completion, or either that or the Cobb one. I forget. But I think there was some positives there.
On the left. Yeah.
Either way, I thought there were some positives there, but not much else. That's not much positive you're going to take away from this, other than hopefully you got it all out of your system week 1, including the bad penalty that takes away an interception. Get that out of the system. Just burn it all and get it all done with now. We'll have a seance and figure it all out. And it's all done now.
Well, speaking of which, what do you think going into this home opener on Monday night? Do you think obviously the narrative all week will be, okay, they're focused, they're going to come out, and they're going to prove what an aberration that was, etc. But does that do a whole lot for us as fans sitting on the outside and saying, great, well, you got it together and you beat the Lions at home? I mean, they're expected to, right? I mean, imagine, as bad as this felt, I can't even fathom the idea of even like, I'll take, a win. A win is a win. Like Matt always says, this league will humble you quick, as the Packers are experiencing at this moment. But man, if they struggle against the Lions, then we're going to see, even if they win, they gotta make a statement in this game, don't they?
They definitely need to win, and you would like to see a statement. And I think if you see obviously a win and steps in the right direction, like listen, like the defensive line getting blown off the ball, if we don't see that again, that would be a really nice start. Like just right. some things like that are what you'd really like to see. But we haven't seen much adversity in the Matt LaFleur era, right? Like this is his first time ever with a losing record. This is technically his first time losing back-to-back games, even though they're in different seasons. Right. We haven't seen him be behind the 8 ball. We haven't seen this franchise be behind the 8 ball with Matt LaFleur's head coach. Pretty much the most they had to deal with was Bakhtiari's injury a season ago. So, if something like that would happen, if they struggle again against Detroit, or heaven forbid they would lose that game, then we're going to see what this team is made of and what type of adversity they can overcome. But I do think they're going to bounce back. But I do think there are some issues here that are going to be not just fixed in a couple practices this week that they're going to have to figure out as time goes on.
Couldn't agree more. As usual, good stuff from Andy Herman, the Don of the Pack a Day podcast. Andy, thanks so much for joining me, man.
Let's do it again.